my name is Anne from Yoga, Healing, and Astrology, and today I'll be talking to you in our Yoga Basics series about the yoga strap and yoga block and how to use these effectively in your practice. A yoga strap and block are not handicaps in your practice, and in fact, they are used no matter how flexible you may be. So please don't ever let that deter you from turning to these really amazing tools to help you in your yoga practice. A strap and a block become physical extensions of your body, and they help you and allow you to stay in alignment in your poses. So this is really important because when the body feels safe and when it feels supported, and you're not always on that edge of sensation where you really feel like everything's being pulled or too much. When you're in that place, the breath usually becomes restricted. And you're then at the point where you're sacrificing your breath over trying to force yourself to try to be in a pose or try to force yourself beyond your current flexibility. So using these blocks and these straps are really important tools because they allow the body to feel safe and supported, and in fact allow you to go deeper into the poses while still maintaining your breath. Today I'll take you through some of my favorite poses and ways to use these amazing tools in your yoga asana practice. So you can actually modify downward dog, which is the most common pose that you'll find in a yoga class or in your yoga asana. It really stretches so many parts of the body and is so wonderful for the spine. But if you're finding any trouble as far as getting enough extension to be able to push most of the weight out of the hands and into the legs, or any discomfort in your wrists, place 2 blocks at the top of the mat, spread your hands nice and wide, and practice gripping down into the fingertips now that you've got something a bit more dimensional to grip down into, and lift up then underneath the palm of the hand so there's a bit of space there. And then you can then curl the toes under and then push back into your downward dog and see if that makes the pose more comfortable, perhaps on the wrists, on the hands, on the shoulders. And then you can feel more of the weight going into the feet and more of the stretch into the hamstrings from this modification. So give that a try and let me know if it helps you. Another common pose that you'll do in your sun salutations will be upward dog. And this can sometimes be challenging to really be able to push down enough where you can really extend up out of the neck area, as well as give the full extension in the arm, enough that your lower body has enough clearance as well to lift up off of the mat. So this time, instead of placing the blocks at the very top of the mat closer together, you're going to place them wider to the outside of the mat to allow room for your body between them. Again, we'll place the hands on top of the block, and then this way we'll step the feet back, come up onto the tops of the feet this way, and then you can lower yourself down and then lower yourself back up this way. So this might be a little bit more comfortable than a typical upward dog for you. Give it a try and see if it helps as well. Next, we'll do a bridge pose supported with a block underneath the sacrum. So what you're going to do is face this way on your mat, place the block behind your low back here, and then you can lay back onto it, slide yourself back, and slide the block right underneath the sacrum bone, and then lower yourself down this way. And you can place the block either at this lowest position. You can also lift and place it on this position. Or if you want a little bit higher, you can also place the block on the highest setting and enjoy this as well. You can modify, again, as much as you would like to in this supported bridge pose, or simply just relax and enjoy this nice, very gentle inversion. If you're feeling a little bit more adventurous, you can also lift one of the legs, or you can lift both legs and have a very safe inversion without putting any pressure on your neck. So give that a try. And another version is you can also just pull the knees into the chest like so, and feel that release in the low back as well. So this is supported bridge with a block. Another great modification with a block is for Navasana, or for a low squat. So this is great if you have a lot of tension in the hips. So if you're coming into a low squat and you feel like this is really uncomfortable, you can always use a block and place that right underneath the sit bones like this. And again, what's great is about the block is that you can modify the height of the block depending on which side you place it on. So if this isn't high enough, you can always place it this way, or you can also place it this way. So there's really not a way that you can avoid doing this pose, and you can further progress in your low squats. And this way you're able to hold the pose, but then also the body feels completely supported, so that you can then begin to open up the hips and feel that nice stretch in a safe and supported way. Another great modification for a forward fold, if you're finding that it gives you a lot of tension through the spine, you'll notice that in yoga classes that the teacher will instruct you to let go of the head. So very common for students of yoga is when they go into a forward fold, they're holding their neck up like this. But then if they relax the head down, they'll feel a lot of tension in the cervical spine and in the neck. So a great way to make your forward folds more comfortable is to use a block. And you can use one or two depending on where you're at. So I would say the very beginning level, I would place a block down like this. And then I would make kind of an upside down T shape like so. And then as you forward fold, you have something to place your head on this way. And you'll feel a very nice gentle release in the cervical spine this way. And then as you progress, you can lower the block down, and eventually you can place just one block down and then just place your head on that as well. And you'll notice how different that feels just to be able to push your head into something as you progress in your forward folds. So give that a try and see how it feels. Another common yoga pose that you'll come across is called Supta Baddha Konasana, and that is where you bring the soles of the feet together, and often you're instructed to open up your feet, trying to move the hips down. But oftentimes, just being in this pose is enough to feel quite a big stretch in the abductors and the inner legs. So I like to use two blocks for this, and you can place one block underneath each knee. And that way, again, it's just such a small but gentle encouragement for the legs to be able to relax. Like once there's something underneath there, it just really signals to the body, I have something to relax into. There's something supported. It doesn't just feel like this big, huge strain on the abductors. So try placing them underneath the knees this way. And if you're doing this in a reclined position, it still works. So if you have the legs together, you can still place them underneath the knees as you recline back, and do that in more of a reclined position. Next, we'll do camel pose, which can be a very challenging pose. We're often, for most of our lives, hinged at the hips this way. Whether we're seated or even if we're standing, we're usually hinged this way. So when we come into camel pose, you come onto the knees. Knees are hip distance apart, as well as the feet behind you. I would recommend the toes curled under, or if it feels more stable, you can have the tops of the feet on the mat. Then take your two blocks and place them inside the legs, or you can place them on the outside of the legs. Again, just experiment and see where you feel more comfortable. So instead of coming back and having to, if it feels like too great of a distance to cover, of trying to grab onto the heels, instead you can come onto the blocks and then be able to push out and forward from there and feel that nice release in the front of the hip flexor. So try this modification for camel with two blocks. If it feels better, again, you can place the blocks on the outside, like so. And then you'll have a bit more width in the shoulders in which to experiment with your camel pose. Another simple modification for your yoga asana practice is even just the pose that I'm doing now, which is hero pose. If it feels extremely uncomfortable to have even just the hips down onto the heels, a great modification is to simply slide a block between the feet and then sit down on the block this way, or like so. So there's a few different ways that you can do that, and just find what feels most comfortable so that you can stay with your breath. Next, we'll do pigeon pose. Pigeon pose can be quite difficult for those of you with very tight hips, and it can be a bit frustrating to try to get into that pose comfortably. So what I like to do is to start on all fours and then bring the leg forward that you'd like to stretch. So whichever leg you're bringing forward, take your block and slide that right underneath the hip this way. So place the block right underneath the hip, and then as you lower down, that hip has something in which to go onto, and then you can keep the pose upright like this, or you can lean forward this way. And that keeps the hips in line, so you're not tipping them on either way, and you're still able to get that nice stretch along the back of the glute and thigh. Another great modification too, if you're already here, is to place a block at the front of your mat, and that way you have something to place your forehead on. So instead of coming here and just letting the head and neck drop like this, you have a nice block in which to rest the forehead and then maintain this pose in a very aligned and comfortable way, and you're not straining or pulling on the neck too much. And then as you perhaps release further down into this, you can even lower it down this way to further support this beautiful pigeon pose, which is so wonderful for the hips. The next pose I'll go over is Navasana, or boat pose. Boat pose can be quite challenging and be able to engage your core muscles while not sinking into the low back. So typically, a beginner, when they start in Navasana, it's very difficult to pull the low back up and out and not be sinking down or rounding into the low back, but also to be able to engage those low core muscles. So one of the great things that you can do to be able to encourage that engagement in the low abdominals is to place a block between the legs and squeeze them together. And then you can lean back and have something physical to squeeze into, and that will really engage those low abdominals. If it's uncomfortable, which it is for some people to squeeze a block between the legs, you can also bring a block between the feet. So instead you can place the block between the feet, squeeze it this way, and then you have that entire leg moving towards each other, and that also engages the low abdominals. And then you can move into whatever variation of boat pose that you would like to do. In addition, you can bring the block this way, and you can also have a block between the legs, and then you're further encouraging the legs to squeeze together, using the low abdominals, helping you to stay out of the low back. So try those modifications for Navasana and see if they're helpful for you. Okay, one of my favorites, Mayurasana, fish pose. This is a pose that a lot of students avoid because maybe it looks a little bit scary, maybe it's a bit too much of a opener or a back bend, but it's so wonderful for your neck, just for everyday correcting the tendency of always bringing the neck forward. It will feel so good if you just give it a try. And what you're going to do is place it in the middle of the mat like so, or you can place it on whatever level or height that you would like. And basically what you're going to do is come down onto the elbows and the forearms and place that block right on your mid back so it goes up in between the shoulder blades. And then you can release back into that pose and bring the top of the head to the mat. If that's still too much on the neck, then you can also bring a block right underneath the base of the neck, and you can modify the pose this way as well. and then you're still getting that nice opening through the chest, the front of the shoulders, and then progressively you can also lower this down bit by bit as you get more comfortable in this pose. So give that a try and see if that helps you feel more comfortable and able to pose Mayurasana or fish pose in your Asana practice. Another wonderful way in which to use a yoga block in your practice is in some of the standing postures. So the most common standing posture that you'll find in a yoga class in Asana practice is triangle pose or Trikonasana. So usually they'll instruct you to go like this and bring your arms out and extend and then come down, and you'll notice that you're kind of just hanging out here. And of course you can always place your hand on your shin, but to further encourage the body to go a little bit further down, go ahead and place a block just on the outside of the leg, and that way you have something to rest your hand on. If you're right about here and you could touch your fingertips, I would still encourage you to use a block instead so that you're not putting any pressure on your fingertips that way, just in case you do topple over. It's a little bit safer. So you can place it again on whatever height that you'd like to, and that way you're still having an active hand. You can grip around that block, and then you can also push up and out of that block and then reach the arm up. And then you're nice and open. You're able to fully extend and push down and out and have that same sensation that you would get if you had your hand on the ground. And that also encourages a further opening in the pose in the side body as well. So don't be afraid to use this modification. It's a great one for Trikonasana. Another modification is in your side stretch. So if you're coming down here and you're trying to balance again on your fingertips, or you're kind of just almost halfway between here and being able to place the hand on the ground, go again, just place the block on the outside of the foot, grip down into it, nice active hands, active feet, and then use that block so that you can start to rotate the chest open and forward. So give that a try as well for your standing poses. One of my favorite ways to use a block is, you can basically use a block in any pose in the sun salutation, but one of my favorite ways to use the block is to place it between the legs. This helps encourage more of an inward spiral of the legs, more of a hugging towards center, and helps release the outer legs. So it puts more of a focus on the abductors, on the inner leg, than simply relying on the quadriceps or the hamstrings to support you through the pose. So you just place that between, and whether you're doing Surya Namaskar A or B, it doesn't really matter. It just helps to further encourage you to use your abdominals and again your inner legs to support you and help support and protect the low back as well. So just squeezing that block in, moving through the movement, and you can even, as you jump back, squeeze that block between your legs and jump back with the block between your legs, lowering down all the way through and back down into downward dog. Again, helping to spiral the legs in, push the abductors in, further strengthening those, and then releasing through the back of the legs. If you're coming up and you're doing Surya Namaskar B, you can also place the block between the legs, squeeze them down, and then bringing the arms up and putting more of a focus on having that really strong, low abdominals, forcing the abductors and the inner legs to really work here instead of relying just on the outside of the legs on the IT bands. And you may even feel like it helps release the outside of the legs as well. So give that a try in Utkatasana and in your full sun salutation, Surya Namaskar A or B. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hopefully you found these suggestions helpful, and please give them a try and let me know if they help you as well. Again, there's a lot more ways you can use blocks in your yoga practice. These are just a few suggestions and some of my favorite ways to use a block. And in the next video, I will be sharing ways to use a yoga strap, so stay tuned for that. And please don't forget to click the like button if you enjoyed this and subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos. Take care and have a wonderful day.